So I just been leaving the Kenwood sitting like this. I'm so tired of taking this thing apart and putting it back together. I think that's probably going to put more wear and tear on the stupid thing. I think what the issue with these is too, the more that you mess with them, the more you move things around, and the more you do that, the more likely you are to disturb something. But every time I turn it on, it locks now, and I don't know if I just need to just leave it on or what I'm going to do, but I guess it's fine. I can just leave it right here. I don't have anything else to work on at the moment, so we'll just leave it here and maybe talk on it tonight in this kind of condition and wait for it to screw up. I pulled the PLL board again, and I tested the VCOs, and 3 of them were out of lock. I pulled the board, and I started just looking through it really carefully with the magnifying glass and just resoldering stuff. I got the heat gun out. I tried to get a little bit more wax out of the deal there, and then I put it back in there, and I plugged everything back in, turned it on, and it didn't work at first. And then I shut it off, and I let it sit for a few minutes and turned it back on, and it was working. And it's been working ever since. So, it's not any indication of anything, because it could just quit working for any reason. That's kind of what I've seen. Now, I had this radio for 2 years before I ever had PLL problem, except for when I first got it. So when I very first got it, the guy had worked on it extensively. He'd written all over in it with markers and coloring crayons and all that fun stuff, and got his highlighters out and wrote all over in the manuals. So he wasn't able to really get it to work perfectly, I don't think, but he thought it was working, and he listed it for sale. And when I told him I was interested, he said sure, and found out that I didn't live too far. And then I was supposed to come get it in the morning, and he had sent me an email saying, I can't sell it to you, it doesn't work again. I think he said again, yeah, and so I was like, oh, what's wrong with it? It's got dots on the display, so I thought, okay, that should be pretty easy, just clean out some stuff. I was thinking, TS940. So I went out there and bought it, and I got it pretty cheap. He had a 950. It wasn't an SDX, but it was a 950 with the unit underneath the bottom. And he wanted a little bit more money than I wanted to pay for it, but I probably should have bought it from him. I think it would have been a good radio. At any rate, I got it home, and I fixed it by finding some issues on the control board. And for 2 years, it worked. It just had low receive, and it never lost lock or anything. So 2 weeks ago, I started working on this thing, got rid of the low receive, and then now I have PLL issues. So this thing's just nuts. It's got to be one of the worst radios Kenwood made, just because they drilled all the holes in the board the same size, and they're all basically, to accommodate large pins, and so it's smaller wires and large holes. I don't know if we can actually see. At least that's what people say. When we look in here, let's see. We can see this right there. That's a good example. See that wire? See how big the hole is around the wire? And look at the resistor next to it. So I think the holes are just too big, and what happens is the solder kind of dimples up and cracks over time. So, and I think, especially if you just start, pulling on stuff, I think that's another issue. And every time you flip this thing down, this whole wiring harness, it's all cinched together with zip ties. I moved a bunch of stuff, so that it wouldn't do that anymore. But, anytime you get into this thing, you're going to cause problems. There's somebody went in here and soldered the pins on everything so we can focus on it. So yeah, they removed the connector and soldered pins. So I probably need to check all that stuff too, but I'm losing lock to the VCO, so it's not going to be on the digital board. I'm not worried about that. Um, there's a carrier board inside of the back of here, and then I don't know what this board's called, another digital board, and then this is the tuner board. So basically, the boards that I'm having issues with are the one down in here, and the one inside here, and then the control board is bad too. I did touch some stuff up on the IF board, but anyway. So I just let it run, see what happens. I mean, it's a pretty radio. And then you have the power supply issues with these two. So if you don't have an issue with this, you could have an issue with the power supply. I'm not too worried about it. What I have is so you hear my fans, they're on. They're in series, and they go over to the 24 volt line. So when I turn off my radio, they drain down the power supply. There's always a load on the power supply. So you don't get this surge when you turn it on or off. And at least that's the idea. So it was recommended to me by a friend to do that, and I did it on my 930, and I did it on this one. On my 930, I actually replaced the fans with something different. And then with this, I realized there's no reason to do that. Just use the fans, wire them in series. They're both 12 volts, and then you can put them on the 24 volt line. And do it like that. And hopefully that will cause it to last longer. If it doesn't, there's a guy that sells a computer switcher power supply that you can swap in here after you assess whether or not it's taken out everything in your PA deck. They even make an LD MOS final board for this radio. So, I mean, people love these things, but, I mean, they are a pain. When they're wrong, they're wrong. So, we're just going to deal with this for a while, and, I'm not really going to probably mess with it a whole lot more after this if it keeps screwing up. I'll just put it on the shelf and find something else to do in the meantime. I mean, I don't mind fiddling with radios, but I don't want to do it 2 weeks, every day. So, anyway,